Okay, so last class we talked about how a census is very difficult. It's very difficult to ask every single person their opinion. And so what we generally do is define a population, and then from that population we take a sample. And that's who we ask their opinion of. And so today what we're going to talk about is how to design a sample. And so a sample design is a method used to choose a sample from a population. And there's several that we're going to talk about today. Some are good, some are bad. And so obviously if you've got a poor sample design, you're going to produce misleading conclusions. And you could get sued over that, so you want to be careful. So today we're going to talk about how to plan a sample survey. It's just an organized plan. First, you want to say exactly what population you want to describe. So for example, we might want to get the opinions of students at Fulton High School. That would be our population. Or we might want to know what the adults that work at the hospital across the street think. That would be our population. And then we want to say exactly what we want to measure and define our variables. And then, so for example, they did a survey for what we wanted our homecoming theme to be. And so we wanted to measure what students' opinions were on the homecoming themes. And so our variables might have been Hollywood and whatever the other choices were. And then we had to choose a sample. And so we're going to talk about all the different ways to choose a sample today. So this is an example of what's wrong with this picture. We got a cat coming to the door asking, do you or have you ever owned a fur coat? So obviously this person might not say the truth because, you know, a cat has a fur coat. Another example would be if you go to the mall and you want to know how many people like to shop. So you go to the mall and you ask people. Well, obviously people that tend to go to the mall tend to shop. Unless you're me, who has to take their 10-year-old daughter to the mall because she likes to shop. But chances are you'll run into people more likely to like to shop. And so that is what we would call a convenience sample, is choosing individuals from the population who are easy to reach. Another example would be like if I wanted to get the opinion, some opinion from Fulton high schoolers, and I only ask students that I teach. Well, that would be a problem. It would be convenient for me, but that would be a problem because I mostly teach sophomores, so I'd be getting the opinions of mostly sophomores. Another thing you always have to keep in mind is bias. And so that's where you systematically favor certain outcomes. So it consistently underestimates or consistently overestimates the value you want to know. So for example, on American Idol, think for a second, who generally watches American Idol? And then of the people who generally watch American Idol, who's more likely to vote? And so there's actually been quite a bit of scandals. I linked to American Idol controversies if you wanted to read more about it. But actually there's been quite a bit of people that have been upset because they thought that there was gender bias. Most of the people that vote on American Idol tend to be young girls, so they might just vote for the cute boy or what have you. So they've kind of been sued over it. So you should check that out. That would be an example of bias. They say it's open and fair, but who's really watching and who's really voting is the question. There's also voluntary response sample. So please fill that in the blank. And that's people who choose themselves by responding to a general invitation. So these are biased because people with strong opinions, usually negative ones, are most likely to respond. So in this example, it says, sharing information with others. Would you have liked Facebook to have required you to opt in to share information rather than opt out? And 93% of the people said, yes, I would have preferred opt in. Well, generally, these people who said no probably don't care either way. So this particular survey doesn't really interest them. So really you're having, of these 605 people, most of them are probably irritated that you don't have to opt in. You can just get information shared with you anyway. And so you want to be careful about that. That's very similar to what we were talking about with American Idol, is that it is a voluntary response sample. And generally the people who are responding are young or teenage girls. Not always, but generally. Here's another situation. This is Ann Landers. I don't know if you know anything about her, but she is an advice columnist. She's extremely popular among adults. So if you had to do it over again, would you have children? And so the overwhelming majority, 70% who wrote in, said no, kids aren't worth it. But generally, people who are going to respond to this question are people who feel strongly about it. And so when they actually designed a survey using a better line of questioning, they found that really only 10%, of parents actually thought kids weren't worth it, and 90% were happy with their decision to have children. So that can lead to some serious misleading results. Another example is our last election. I mean, think about it. We really thought that Hillary Clinton, from all the survey data that we had done, was going to win the election. But unfortunately, that didn't happen, or fortunately, whoever you are. So you have to be very careful how you're collecting your data, otherwise you can be misled. This is a former CNN commentator, Lou Dobbs. He doesn't like illegal immigration. One of his shows was largely devoted to attacking the proposal to offer driver's license to illegal immigrants. And during the show, Mr. Dobbs invited his viewers to vote on the question: would you be more likely or less likely to vote on a presidential candidate who supports giving driver's license to illegal aliens? And the result was 97% voted by the end of the show less likely. Well, what type of sample did Mr. Dobbs use in his poll? And how could this sampling method be biased in the poll results? Well, clearly he used a voluntary sample. And generally, of these 7,350 people, well, first they watched the show. The show was talking about how he was against illegal immigrants, allowing illegal immigrants to get driver's license. And so obviously most of the people are going to also vote with him. So 97% of these people probably agree with him, and therefore they voted that way. So what you're going to do is practice some of these. It's called Valid Claims. It's in Khan Academy. Here's an example of what you're going to be looking at. So this says Wholesome, probably like Whole Food Company. They've been hired to design a healthy menu for the cafeteria at Ridgemont High School. They want to conduct a survey to determine what percentage of Ridgemont's 150 students, 1,500 students, like broccoli. And the survey will ask, do you like broccoli? All right, so if they did a census, they would ask all of them. So the population here is Ridgemont High School students. So which of the following survey methods will allow Wholesome Food Company to make a valid conclusion about the percentage of students at Ridgemont that like broccoli? So if they asked 100 students in the line at the salad bar during lunchtime, that would probably skew their results towards liking broccoli, because generally people at the salad bar probably like vegetables, right? So what they would have to do is some kind of computer program to generate a list of random students and ask those students, a random list of 100 different students, ask those students what they prefer. That would be the best method. The other one would give you a skewed result. Go ahead and stop the video, and you can go get 100 on valid claims. I believe you only have to do 4 or 7 questions to get 100.